All right, tonight we are playing on Ecamm, and we are talking websites with the man from Studio One Design, and that is studio1design.com. Greg Merrilees, thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me, Dave. It's awesome to be here, man. Been listening to your podcast for a while, and yeah, I'm super excited.
And we get a great Aussie accent to go with it, which always, anytime I hear anybody from across the pond, I'm like, oh, this is so much fun. So I really appreciate it. And you are a man that makes really pretty websites. Like when you go over your designs and your portfolio, I was like, holy cow. And so I wanted to bring you on because I'm starting to get more and more, like I put in quotation marks, I designed websites in Microsoft Front Page, like in the 90s. Like that was my extent. Yeah, it's been a while. OG, yeah, in Dreamweaver and all these other things. So I've always told people I make very basic websites. If you need like a 3-page website, I'm your guy. But if you need, A/B split testing and all this other stuff, I'm not your guy. And so I wanted to bring you on just to kind of talk about, there are a lot of podcasters that are like, yeah, I know I need a website. Not all of them, because some of them, that is the question, do I need a website? And I always say, we all get excited about YouTube because it's the number 2 search engine, but the number 1 search engine is Google, and it needs a website. And so I thought we could kind of go over like just the basics of like, what do you do with a website? And when you get a new client, where do you start? What's the first thing you have to figure out?
Absolutely. Like, what is the purpose of their website? Is it just to host a podcast, or is it to promote one of their services or coaching or courses or whatever else it could be, right? So that's the first thing, because realistically, you've got to have the end goal in mind before you start designing. And then we have to figure out a strategy. Before we start talking about look and feel and colors and design, the most important thing is the strategy, and then we work from there.
Yeah, I know. One of the sites you designed that I think is really awesome is Jordan Harbinger is a friend of mine and is just absolutely crushing it in the podcasting space. And so when I went over and I was looking at his site, I was like, oh, all right, there's Greg again. So every time I see a good looking website, I'm like, oh, there's that again. So can you, without, I don't know if you're disclosing any, client privilege, but like when you were working with Jordan, what was the end goal?
Yeah, I mean, for him, his main income source is advertising, right? So what we did on his website, and we're sharing our screen as well for this interview, aren't we? So I could show you a page while we're talking about it, is this sponsorship page that we have on his website. And so what this is all about, we put a lot of effort into this because this is his number way of monetizing, is to have advertisers sponsor the show, right? And by the way, I love one of your episodes where you're talking about having your audience talk about what annoys you about ads, and people saying, and you even said yourself that he does it really well because he reads the ads himself and it's different every time, right? Yeah, it was really cool. But anyway, so we have this page which really talks about his audience and what his advertisers will get out of this audience, essentially, right? So he breaks it down with the demographics. So in this case, 25 to 49-year-old men and women, and just talks a little bit more about, their demographics, essentially. And then he is talking up his podcast, top 1% most followed and most shared podcast on Spotify. And then he's got a little bit more of a breakdown of what's important to an advertiser on his show and how he will advertise them, like a 60-second mid-roll and, things like that, right? So then it's just an infographic page, essentially, just really breaking down the demographics into more and more detail. So yeah, it's, to me, it's like this, because this is his number 1 way of creating income, that's why he put so much effort into this page. Now, you don't have to do this every time, but it is a pretty powerful page. And then obviously there's some social proof from people like Tim Ferriss, Ramit Sethi, Simon Sinek, Malcolm Gladwell, etc., and then a call to action to inquire, essentially. So that was our strategy because of the fact that his number 1 way of generating income is through the advertising. And also, he's got some free courses for networking. And then we used to have that as a call to action on the homepage. This is his homepage. But now he just has like start here. So, people can build trust in his brand, and he gives them a sort of starter pack of episodes, essentially. But also you might notice on this homepage, obviously it's unique branding, but it has just a little bit of what we call impact metrics, 10 million downloads per month, number 10 in Apple Podcasts, and then various ways to listen as well. Yeah.
Well, and the other thing I noticed when we're looking at his sponsor page is the navigation changes, and there's really only one thing to do on that page, and that is contact him. So you've got the sponsor of the show link at the top and then the one at the bottom, and the rest is just reason after reason after reason why you should sponsor the show. So
exactly,
and
spot on.
Yeah.
Sorry, go on. Yeah.
Well, but it just makes sense. And then, because normally I would say, well, wait a minute, you've sent somebody down, and the only way to get back to your homepage is hit the back button. But in this case, that's kind of the goal, is to like, no, we want them to stay right here and get in contact with it.
Exactly right. We want to remove all distractions, So we remove the top navigation, we remove the logo, because obviously we've got the logo here anyway, why sponsor the show. And the call to action, you always should have a call to action above the fold, and this will just literally anchor link down to the bottom where they can fill in the details. And the reason we do that is so that people realize, oh, I just missed all this stuff, if they didn't scroll in the first place.
Right. Excellent.
Yeah.
So that's a great example of a landing page. What are some of the I guess common mistakes that people make? Because especially if if you're just a podcaster and you're talking about your passion and it's your hobby and you're hoping to maybe eventually turn it into some sort of income, you don't have a marketing background maybe, and you definitely don't have a web design. So what are some of the common mistakes that people make?
Yeah, absolutely. So for a start, I think I'll just show you a couple of, let's say, before and afters of other websites that we've designed, right? Here's a before design. This is a really, popular comedy podcast, right? So they just used the template or designed it themselves. Now, don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with templates, especially when you're starting out. But I feel like once you are monetizing your podcast, if that is your goal, some people don't want to monetize, it's just a hobby, right? But if you are monetizing it, then that's when I feel like you need to invest back into the look and feel, and obviously even copywriting and, photography and all sorts of things. But essentially, this was their website before we redesigned it. Now, they just use a template, and on various screen sizes, it would chop off the person's, the host's head. So that's a little rookie mistake there. But then there's no call to action here. It doesn't really have much clarity on what this podcast is all about. You wouldn't know it's a very popular podcast. And as we scroll, sure, they've got listen on these things, which is fine. And by the way, these things are essentially what we call a leakage point, but because they're going off to these platforms where people can subscribe, then that's going to build more trust in the brand. So that's totally fine. Then literally the rest of the homepage just had a little bit of what this is all about, etc. A little bit of authority boost in things here, which in my opinion, quite hidden, top 5% traffic podcasts worldwide, etc. Watch a show, some video, and that was it, right? So what we did, and there's just a few mistakes there, but we can go into other mistakes shortly with other examples. But what we generally do for a redesign is we'll start with what we call a mood board. And this is literally just coming up with a color palette, a look and feel. Before we do this, though, I should say we do have a call with the client. They answer a questionnaire. We dive deep into the questionnaire on the call, and that's after that is where we figure out what direction to take the brand as far as the look and feel. And just some key words that come out of the questionnaire and the call, in this case, was loyalty, excitement, modern, family, playful, fun, and friendly. So this color palette represents those words. And when we send this bit of a color breakdown, when we send this to the client, we give them a walkthrough video from the brand director explaining why we did what. This was their existing logo, just recolored. They didn't want to change their logo, and that's fine. We just recolored their logo for them. And the fonts as well, we just gave them a lot of visual font hierarchy with different size, different type of fonts. And when we present this to the client, it's really just a bunch of ideas. We get their feedback before we start designing, because when we start designing, we want it to be pretty close to what they have approved. And then we offer unlimited design revisions on everything we do. So we just want to start with the right foot. But yeah, just some background elements and colors, etc., tying in with the brand, photography direction that we give them as well, so they can hand this to their photographer. And then just some various icons and illustrations that we'll use throughout, and various graphic layouts throughout the pages, and even for their social media as well. So then here's the redesign. So this is their homepage, and you'll see, just above the fold, the Commercial Break podcast, who the hosts are, picture of them, obviously pretty cool design. And then, a little bit of a explainer. It's not much, but it's it's enough to let people know what this show is all about. And then 4.1 million podcast downloads per month, number one trending. All these little metrics are just things that people can instantly realize that these guys are the real deal, and it just builds more trust in the brand.
Yeah, that's night and day difference between where they started and where they ended up. The other thing is it's just a nice way everything kind of just sits on top of each other, and there's no overlapping and things like that. There are those people that want to do the DIY. Do you have a favorite tool of choice?
Yep. Yeah, I mean, look, you guys use Podpage, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, which I think is fantastic. And that's what I'd recommend if you are starting out, for sure. I mean, they've put so much thought into this. I heard the founder on your podcast being interviewed talking about, what they have in their, I think it's the premium plan or whatever they call that plan.
Yeah, the elite plan, I think. Yeah.
Elite, that's the one, yeah. And I thought that was fantastic. Great interview. But yeah, all the features that these guys have is incredible. I mean, you can do the same thing on WordPress, but this is all built into one. Right. I mean, there's nothing wrong with this as a platform in general, even if you grow, right? But to me, it's just the design feels a little bit templatey. That's my only criticism, but I think it's great when you're starting out, for sure.
Yeah. Now, I see all the stuff you're doing as we're looking at this. Is this all, I'm assuming, all on WordPress? And then what tool do you use for that? Because there are a ton.
I mean, for design, we use Figma for custom design. Everything's custom designed. And then, for imagery, obviously we try not to use stock imagery if we can help it. We encourage clients to use their own photography, but sometimes if we create imagery, we'll use Adobe Stock, or we'll use Mid-Journey for creating imagery. But for building the website, after it's all approved, we build it using Elementor for WordPress, essentially. And that has a lot of stuff built into it as well.
Yeah,
which is pretty good, pretty flexible. And because like I said before, the main you've got to work out what the main purpose of the website is. And if it's not just all about a podcast, it might be to promote your services or whatever, then if that's the case, you want the functionality to have everything built into it so that you can offer all those other little features that come with offering services or a SaaS business or coaching, etc. There might be a membership attached to it. Yeah.
Yeah, I know for years, if you went to my website, it was a podcast that had a business. And a couple of years ago, I started taking the business a little more seriously. So now when you go to the front page, my landing page is all about, when I look at your website and you go to mine, it's like wow, that is a shock to the system. Like, oh my goodness. Oh, wow. One was designed by a guy that does it for a living. The other guy was a design that's, a teacher. Yeah. So just a little bit of a difference. And, but nonetheless, the front page is still it's a landing page, but wow, that's a shock.
Can I talk about that though? Because I think you do some things. Yeah, you do some things really well on here. I think, School of Podcasting, I think it's a great brand and it says what's on the box, you know what I mean? But then you're talking here about the problems. This is fantastic copywriting. Like, most people don't understand their audience, and you really understand your audience. I know you obviously you've got your podcast community. You ask them a lot of questions in there, but you also ask questions on your podcast and have people call in, right? It's amazing. Yeah. But the point is, you understand your audience. And when you put this on your website, you might be feeling a little overwhelmed, and then you're talking about the problems that they face, essentially, then people are going to identify that, the correct target audience will go, oh yeah, that's me, right? So this is really important in copywriting to let people know that you have a solution to those problems. So you're doing some things really well. It's just the design's letting you down, but it's not bad, You've got a lot of...
You're very kind. I would call it bad after looking at yours, but I'm like, big giant join today button, and it just, it's, boy.
At least it stands out. But and then, you have some really good social proof as well. Authority boosting, like the Hall of Fame, that you mentioned on your podcast as well. All that stuff is fantastic for boosting credibility and trust in the brand. But having really good testimonials as well is certainly what you want to offer. And then you have this incredible 30-day money-back guarantee, and that's on the monthly and the annual, right? You have which is really cool. And a big call to action. Sure, it's big, but it gets your attention, right?
I had a business coach, because after I was, in the Hall of Fame, I wasn't really saying it. And he goes, how many people can say that? I'm like, I don't know, 14, I think at that point, or something like that. He goes, you need to say that every time you turn on the microphone. I go, but that's that whole imposter syndrome, kind of thing.
Yeah.
He's like, look, use it. Not everybody can say it. And I was like, all right. So it is what it is. Now,
well done. Yeah.
So you brought up copywriting, and I know you have a blog on this on your website. Again, check it out, design.com. What's more important? Is it copywriting or is it design?
It's both. Look, I have no doubt that copywriting is what people will read to make sure that they're in the right place, to make sure that they understand, because people only care what's in it for them. So they just need to know that you understand their situation, their problems, what the implications are if they don't address the cause of the problem and the need, which is your solution essentially. And so to me, the copywriting needs to say all those things. And that little thing that I just said is using a framework called spin selling, based on a book by Neil Rackham, Spin Selling. And there's another book, Building a Story Brand, by Donald Miller, who obviously I think you know him as well. But his philosophy in a nutshell is your website needs to be the guide and your prospects or your clients are the hero, and they need to be the hero of your story, right? So if I'm just showing you this example now, saxschoolonline.com, one of our clients, and basically he had okay copy, but a really terrible design, right? Mm. And then he did invest in copy as well to improve the copy, but he also invested in the design. Now, I would say that he got an incredible result. He built his audience on YouTube, right? 12.5 million YouTube views. Yeah. And he's got like 25,000 students. He's pretty big now. But yeah, the testimonial that he left for us was incredible. And it definitely contributed to both copy and design. And I would say the design needs to give copywriting wings, essentially, right? It really needs to enhance the messaging to make you look as professional as possible, and obviously design in a way to appeal to your audience as far as color palette and imagery used and things like that. But yeah, so this here is probably an approach that I would suggest would be the type of approach for your homepage, where he built his audience on, let's say, his show. That's YouTube in this case. In your case, it's the podcast. But then this here is just really good copyright and imagery that supports it, where he's letting people know that he's being aspirational with the copy. He's talking about play with confidence, take your sax to the next level the easy way. And amongst all this as well, he's talking about the problems that they face or the fears that they have, etc. And then he introduces his solution, which is the Sax School Online. He has various courses, but he has a membership as well, right? Obviously, a lot of social proof. He has the tutors in there. And then one thing that he does really well is has this section where he does a comparison chart of joining his sax school versus getting private lessons, and then breaks it down into a cost comparison. Music Academy, $42,000 a year. Private lessons, $2,500. Or his sax school online, $1.32 a day. Plus, he has a 90-day money-back guarantee and a free trial. So, yeah, it's pretty powerful. And yeah, he's just boosted his results like nothing else, having this approach since the new website went live.
Yeah, when we get into branding, just that first impression of like, ooh, okay, this isn't done in crayon. I think I'll work with this person. Speaking of drawing in crayon, one of my favorite pet peeves, if somebody does have a website, is Linktree. Does that get under your skin, or do you have a different pet peeve, or?
I have many, but yeah, look, I would say, design trends, they're a pet peeve, right? If you look at most design trends, every year designers come up with new trends, and I think it's just to keep themselves in work, essentially, but most of them are conversion killers. We're very conversion focused with our design. So what that means as far as pet peeves, I'll come back to Linktree in a minute, but with pet peeves in design, the trends are all about movement and interaction and parallax effects and just all this stuff that's very distracting, and that's why it's a conversion killer. But if you have everything static and put the control in your user's hands, so even if you have an image slider for testimonials, let them scroll through them to get to the next. Don't just have them automatically scroll, because it's just annoying for people. So even video backgrounds and having text over the top, the most important thing is the text over the top. So those video backgrounds are going to annoy people and not read the text, So that, a lot of trends suck.
That makes sense. You're distracting. You bring them, you've worked on your copy, you get them to your website and instantly distract them with a bunch of sliding images and like, wait, is that the earth spinning in the background on this, knitting podcast or something? It's subtly not even remoted. So, but,
Yeah,
and then,
not relevant.
And then, like I say, the thing that gets me about Linktree, I think there's a time and a place for that. Like I have one, but it's not through Linktree. It's through this thing called switchy.io, because on occasion I have somebody will say, Dave, you have 8 million podcasts. Is there any place I can find everything you do? And I'm like, yes, powerofpodcasting.com. And it's just a bunch of links. Here's my book. Here's this. Schedule me for it. That's the only time I ever use that. If somebody goes, well, where can we find all your stuff? But I see people try to use, and we're just, not to pick on Linktree because there are other different companies that are doing the same thing. Sure. But to me, is there any SEO when it comes to a Linktree website?
No, I don't think there's any benefit in it. You're just paying Linktree. So, I mean, what we do instead, like we literally we just offer this as a bonus on every website that we design because it annoys us people having Linktree.
Right.
Most people have it, right? But we just copy that, but we just go whatever the website URL is /links, and we can put whatever we want on there and they can change it to whatever they want quite easily. It links to your website or your latest podcast interview or whatever you want, basically, right?
Yeah, that makes, I get it that it's quick, it's easy, it's cheap. But if, again, going back to the theme, what do you want people to do at your website? And if the first thing is they have to find your website, and, if there's no SEO involved, have fun with that. So that's, for anyone who's using a Linktree, don't. Just like I say, there's a time and a place, but if the goal is to drive traffic to your website, you're going to have to do that through everything else, through your newsletter, through your podcast, because nobody's going to find you through search. So that's not going to work.
Exactly. Yeah.
Go ahead. Any other common mistakes that you see people make?
Yes. So I think talking about SEO, right? We work with a lot of SEO experts at a pretty high level. One of them is Stefan Spencer. He has a couple of podcasts. One is marketingspeak.com. The other one's Get Yourself Optimized. And what we find with podcast post pages, people either just use one of those podcast players where it's an all-in-one. It just has a list of episodes. So there's no SEO value in having that, right? So instead, you want to have an individual post page with one episode per page. And you can go to the extent that I'm about to show you now to get the best results possible for SEO. You don't have to go to this extent, but you should at least have a podcast post page per episode, right? So I'll just run through what this is basically, and you'll go, holy moly, like this is incredible, the amount of effort that is put into this. But at the top, obviously, you want some call to actions to go and subscribe. But then the actual episode in a player, I think he uses Libsyn, which is our favorite as well. But then a little bit of an intro on what this is all about. Then he has like a call to action here that'll actually anchor link down to the bottom of the page. And I'll get to that in a minute, something incredible that he's doing with AI. And then obviously he has the YouTube video embedded. He'll do the video record as well. Then he has links, like anchor links for the timestamps, and they'll just automatically play to that section of the episode. And then he has a link to jump to the links and resources, which is at the bottom of the page. And then he does the transcription, which I know Apple's doing these days as well, that I learned on your podcast. And he just has various images and little call outs of things from the podcast interview, some images that are relevant, some tweetables and things like that, just to be super helpful, and really just multimedia to make it visually interesting and images relevant to the sections. Any books that are mentioned will be featured there as well. And then just get into, and this is super long because it's a long podcast, but then we get to the bottom of it, and that's the important links section. But then he has an actionable checklist, like of takeaways from the episode, which is super helpful. He just uses ChatGPT to come up with them. Then this is a section that he's just about to introduce. So based on using AI tools, I don't know which AI tool he's using, they will like consume the video, the episode of the individual podcast, and then they'll turn that into a 3-part module video course based on actionable takeaways from the podcast episode. And so people can watch that, and then they can take the quiz, which is also generated from the episode from AI, and they'll opt in to take the quiz, and that's his little lead magnet. But that's kind of taking it to the next level. And then the end of the page is just about the host and about the guest and a little disclaimer. And you may also like, and his lead magnet.
That's a lot of content. That is a serious episode page. But
it really is. Like I said, you don't need to go to that level. But he has a whole team putting that together as well.
Yeah, and it's beautiful. That's the other thing. Holy cow. And I've already stolen that idea because I know I always end up with mentioned in this episode, and it's just a big old line of links. And I always think, is anybody going to see these? Because you have to scroll way to the bottom. I like putting that link of, hey, if you're looking for the links, click here and we'll just take you to the bottom of the page. That's a great idea.
Yeah, gotcha. Jump to links and resources. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, cool. And I'll just show another mistake that I see. This is a podcast website in Australia that is massive. It's the number one.
Yeah, to use the Don Miller. So we're looking at a website that says the property couch, and I see a yellow couch, and I barely see now the Indoors Guide to Property Investing. I would not have thought that was what this was about by looking at the image and everything here. I'm just like, I don't know. I would have thought it was a furniture store maybe or something. I see the word couch or maybe psychologist, something like that, but it's definitely not, at least right now, it's not obvious to me what's going on this website.
Exactly. And first impressions are everything, right? Like your website is the director of first impressions these days. So it needs to have clarity. And clarity is one of the biggest problems I see on podcasters' websites or any website, for instance, for that matter. But also, apart from that, so there's little Facebook, etc. This is a little bit old. It's even got Google Plus. It's that old. But it was like 6 years ago, whatever. This is before our redesign. I'll just quickly show you the rest of it. That's it, basically. But then, that's a leakage point. And you don't want to take people off your website to social media. Purpose of social media is bring people to your website, in my opinion. But then the other problem is people have, when they click on one of these social media little icons, they'll have it open in the same tab and then your website's gone forever. So always have any external links open in a new tab. But so then our new design is this one. So Property Couch, Insider's Guide to Property Finance and Money Investment. But even saying the Property Couch podcast, like people often forget to put the word podcast in their USP and you don't actually know that it's a podcast, right? So then they have a lead magnet, which is their free best-selling book. Then they have a little bit of a masterclass. This is basically their whole lead magnet. The entire website is a lead magnet for their finance business where they have like 120 people in their business and they just build their audience on this podcast. And then every one of their funnels, every one of their book funnels or free, they have so much free stuff on their website. Everything leads through a funnel to offering a call with their finance team to help them with their mortgage or their investment properties or whatever is needed, basically. Yeah, they have a whole range of free stuff. Yeah, it's incredible. But that there has grown their team. When we started working with them, they had I think 15, 20 people. And now they've got about 120 people in their team, which is pretty incredible.
That is incredible.
Yeah. And that's not because of their website, but because of their strategy. They've obviously uploaded a slow image, large image, too long to load. Anyway, but so it's the strategy of having a podcast with free information that's helped build trust in their brand and then just give away a lot of free stuff. They hardly ever talk about their business in this podcast.
Well, and you mentioned on your website about how your website can build trust and loyalty. Because if you think it's images and words and things like that, what is more detailed? That's an overview, but how do you do that with your website?
Yeah, great question. So it's all about the strategy piece. So when we first work with a client and we figure out what their offer is and what they've tried in the past and things like that, we often find that they may have a lead magnet, but one of the problems is they'll just, after somebody opts in for a lead magnet, they'll just have a line of text in the pop-up that says, thanks for downloading the lead magnet. So the problem with that is that there's no success page. So there's no page that it goes to, like a slightly different URL, like / thanks for whatever. And so when you don't have a success page, you can't track that as a conversion. And so your Google Analytics, if you set that up properly, won't be tracking any conversions of that little download. Now, if you do have a thank you page, once again, a mistake is people just have a little line of text saying, thanks for downloading the thing. But that's a wasted opportunity because realistically, you've just got somebody's email address because they're interested in your free offer, and you don't know that they don't want more. So the thank you page is the perfect opportunity to offer the next free thing in your funnel. It could be a free call. It depends on your business. It could be a free trial. It could be a limited time offer. It could be a free sample. It just depends on what your business is, but you should always offer something else on that thank you page. And we recommend having a face to camera video, thanking them for downloading the free thing, and then talk about the next offer in that video, and then the call to action underneath. And you can also have extra things on that page, social proof, other things like if you've spoken on stage, like for instance, you probably wouldn't put this on, but because it's not relevant to your audience, but the comedy thing that you did recently, I thought that was an awesome episode. I love the way you broke it down, before it, what led to it, and the lessons. But anyway, super cool. But it's all about boosting your authority and building trust in your brand by just keep offering free things. And obviously, you've collected an email address, so you want to nurture that email because they may not be ready to purchase straight away, but if you're top of mind, then obviously at some point, if you keep offering value in those emails and don't just keep slamming them with offers, like for paid offers, it's
right.
like Gary Vaynerchuk says, jab, 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 right hook. So just keep offering free stuff. And then we just say in your PS, offer a free call for a strategy. It depends on the business, of course, but that's where you would have your offer. Yeah.
Well, speaking of some tools, you mentioned like Elementor, and this is one of those things, everybody has their own preference. When it comes to email lists, you have, if somebody goes, oh, email list, I have to have one of those. Do you have, one that you point people at more than others?
Yeah, Active Campaign, just because we use it, and I used to use Infusionsoft, and it was pretty confusing, and used to have to pay a consultant to run the whole thing for us. But now we just had somebody set it up for us, copied what was in Infusionsoft, and we just run it ourselves quite easily. But it's really good, not just for email marketing, but for lead flow as well, and having like a sales pipeline and figuring out where every lead is in that pipeline and what stage they're at, and it can send automated follow-ups and things like that. So I find that's pretty good value. The price goes up as you have more people on your list, but I think it's awesome. Yeah
And then for hosting, do you have a favorite WordPress host?
Definitely WP Engine all the way. Based in the US, but they also have servers all over the world. So to me, like, it's super fast no matter where you're located, but it's also the world's, in my opinion, the most secure website hosting platform because they don't allow crappy plugins. So that's where a lot of hackers get in, through plugins. So and they also keep plugins updated automatically, and they warn you if there's a plugin on your website, and they'll remove it if it's a threat. And they also have daily backups as well. So if you mess up something yourself, you can just replace it from the day before, and everything's fixed again.
Well, you mentioned plugins. For those that are plugin addicts, do you have a stable that every website we're going to get this plugin, this one, and this one, or is that again based on what the client needs?
It's based on their needs. Like Elementor does have a lot built in. I mean, look, I'm not a WordPress developer myself. I've got 10 WordPress developers on my team to do that for me. But for SEO, Yoast seems to be the best for SEO. And apart from that, just thinking like on Jordan's website, for instance, he has this player at the bottom, which I think is amazing. This client has as well. I forget what it's called though.
Oh, that is Pat Flynn's. Mm-hmm.
Is it? Okay.
I'm pretty sure that's Pat Flynn's something player. So this is where I will add this in post later or put it under the links, but I'm pretty sure that's it. And also, I see a lot of the people on these websites have Google Podcasts still on their website. And I'm like, you might want to start steering people. And I saw somebody had a Stitcher button. I'm like, that doesn't exist anymore. So,
really good point. I think that was Jordan. Good point.
It's like, oops. Oops. I guess the other question, and I think I know the answer to this, is your website ever really done?
No, Definitely not. Never finished. And look, we encourage people to put tools like Hotjar on their website so that you can have a look at the user engagement, where it'll record your screen and have videos of everybody that's using your website, and it has hot heat maps and things like that. And yeah, look, you look at all those things. I look at them like once every couple of weeks, and you always notice, oh, that's not quite right, and people are getting stuck here. So not only that, businesses pivot. Like over time, you know, my business I've had for 24 years has had lots of pivots. And so your website will always need to be updated with new offers. And the other thing is people age, right? So don't have a picture of yourself from 10 years ago. Keep it updated.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you always need to update. Yeah.
Well, you have been doing this a long time. How did you stumble into this? Was this just something you always wanted to do, or you just kind of like all of a sudden you did this, and somebody said, well, can you do that? How did that all come together?
Great question. You're going to love this answer. So basically, we started with T-shirt designs, right? And that's where we started, 24 years ago. And then around 2000, let's say 10 years ago, roughly now, the clothing industry went vertical in Australia and probably all around the world, where they cut out the middleman. They went to China themselves and created their own manufacturing directly to the retailers, right? So unfortunately, the wholesalers were our clients, so they were getting squeezed out. And we tried going directly to the retailers, but that didn't work. They wanted to pay us in 90 days and take 2% off the invoice if they paid within. It just wasn't a good business model. So then I went online and I found podcasts, right? And I just absolutely loved podcasts. And there was one podcast in particular, I think at Get, hosted by two business coaches, James Schramko and Ezra Firestone. He's based in New York, James Schramko in Sydney. And on one of their episodes, they said their logo sucked. I thought, oh yeah, that's an opportunity for me to go in and design a new logo for them. So I did that. And they loved it. And, Ezra, hot dang, this looks like, makes us look like a fancy softball team. And he loved it. And so then jumped on a call with Ezra and we started talking about other designs that we could do. And we started designing his website and then James Schramko's website, and started designing all of their clients' websites. Ezra had me on stage in San Diego. He's an e-commerce, guru. And and James had me on stage in Sydney, and we just grew our business. So it's thanks to podcasts that we made the pivot into what we're doing today.
That's awesome. I always say podcasts lead to relationships, relationships lead to opportunities, and opportunities lead to, it just more relationships, and it just spins and spins. And the next thing you know, you're designing a website for Sly. I mean, that's I saw that at the bottom of your one page, and I was like, hey, I need a website. It was like,
so that was from speaking at Ezra's events, Blue Ribbon Mastermind, I think that you called it, in San Diego. And somebody in the audience was the son of somebody that owns a marketing firm that does marketing for Sylvester Stallone and all these other people like Tony Robbins, actually Donald Trump as well. Not that we want to mention that we designed it for him, but we did design his landing page for his NFTs, if you remember that, about a year and a half ago. Oh, man,
geez. All right.
Yeah, but we don't mention that on our website. Right. So, but anyway, so it just led to, like you said, one thing leads to another, and that's how we've designed for these awesome people. Yeah. That's Frank Oz was another one that you.
Yeah, Frank Oz. I saw that. I was like, oh my gosh, man, Fozzie Bear, Miss Piggy, and a whole bunch of other, that's awesome.
Yeah. Characters, yeah.
One of the thing I wrote down here, I noticed I was on your website, and it may just have been a one-off, but it was one where you were talking about something like, I can't believe what these people are doing on their website. And the video on your website was not a YouTube video. So when it was over, it didn't send me. Is that on purpose, or was it just a fluke? And you're like, just throw it in this video thing. Or do you not put YouTube videos on your website?
We don't even have it. Well, we do have a YouTube channel, but it's hasn't had any love at all. And so it's not our number one way, or not even close to, of getting new prospects. We could invest in that, but our best way is doing podcast interviews like this. So we use Wistia for hosting our videos. And I would say for any marketing video on your website, apart from in blog posts and podcast posts, etc., I would suggest you use another platform like Vimeo or Wistia, because there's no leakage points. Like if you have embedded YouTube, you can go and click on the little YouTube logo, you go off to YouTube, and you're gone forever. So that's why I prefer to use Wistia. Yeah, it's a great question.
I was going to ask one other thing about that, because I thought when I saw that, I was like, you know what? I've got, I think it's a Dillo, and a friend of mine just turned me on to Streamable, which is really cool. Is that something, is it, because you're talking about leakage points, because I thought I could put the video there and then we don't get the YouTube stuff that we all know we can click on and leave, but then maybe later down the page say, like, want more videos, check out my YouTube channel. Like, have that as would that be a better idea, or still a kind of a stupid idea, or what do you think of that?
I think it's a great idea. Like and when you do send people off to your YouTube channel, you can have some code embedded so that there's a pop-up as soon as they land on the YouTube page that says subscribe to the show. And that's great, because as long as you can get people to subscribe to your show, whether it's a podcast or YouTube or wherever you have it hosted, it's going to build more trust in the brand. So I think it's a good idea. Yeah. It's just, especially for non-marketing videos, let's say blog posts or podcast posts on your website, if they are YouTube embeds and you press or somebody presses play, that'll add to the YouTube count. So that's a good thing. Yeah.
The other question I had is, we saw, and we were talking about the one page that had this phenomenal episode page. There is the person that wants to put, 3 sentences in this episode. We talk with, Greg from Studio1Design.com, and we talked websites. Okay. We need a little more than that. So there's going to be that person that's like, I can't write 5,000 words for every post, but we know they need more than 3. Is there a magic number that, how many words or characters, or, I've heard everywhere from, it has to be at least 300 words. And then I heard it had to be 3,000 words. And I'm like, and of course it's Google, but is there a target if you're going for the minimum size? Is there a target you need to hit?
I don't think so. And like, realistically, as long as it's one topic and if it's too broad, then Google won't understand the page, right? I'm not an SEO expert, but we do work with a lot of SEO experts would say the same thing. And I would say there's no minimum or maximum. It just has to be completely relevant to that topic. And it depends how many other competitors are talking about the same topic as to where it'll rank, how old it is. There's so many things that go into the algorithm for SEO. But I don't think the answer is to figure out a minimum or a maximum amount of words. Yeah.
And I know you just said I'm not an SEO expert, but I'm going to throw this at you anyway. What are your thoughts on transcripts on a website? Because so many people are like, I'll have whatever translated and then just vomit that on a page, and lo and behold, my SEO is taken care of. Any thoughts on that?
Yep, I think it should be a summary instead. So we do work with other SEO experts as well. And as long as, like, especially at the top of the post page, if you give people a summary of what it's all about, you can have the transcript underneath, but that's what Google is going to value as well. It's more whatever's written in the top section of the page. That's what they'll value more than what's underneath. So I would say do a summary, and that can be done by AI these days based on the transcript essentially.
And then I should have done this before we hit record, so welcome to edit point 1. I know, obviously, Studio1Design.com. Is there anything we want to send people to?
Yeah, I mean, look, we haven't created it yet, but we could set up a checklist directly for your audience. So Studio1Design.com/Dave, and we can show them 50 things that if they select yes or no in 6 areas across their website. We've done this for other podcasters. And so basically, if at the end of it, they get a score, right, out of 50. And if they score anything under, say, 20, and most people don't get much over 20, right, then at least it shows them what to fix. And if they want our help, then we can help them. And as a bonus as well, I guess if you're happy with this, if somebody does end up buying a website from us, we can give them a bonus we'll design all their social media banners and posts, things like that for them as well.
Beautiful. So I'm not even going to edit that out. I'm just going to leave it in to show that I wasn't prepared. Go to Design.com/Dave. We'll take you over to that. And now you have homework to do when you get
exactly. It won't take as long. Yeah, it's fine.
Well, I did see where you had a quiz on your website. Is that kind of what this is that you're sending them to? How is that working for you?
Pretty good. Yeah, exactly. We have a generic one on there, and that's just an exit pop. And That's another little mistake, just quickly. Some people have an entry pop. As soon as you land on the website, they have a pop-up.
Thank you.
Instead, wait. It could be a timed pop-up, and when they scroll to the bottom, or they've scrolled through a few pages, or it's a couple of minutes after they land on the page. But it's better to have that, or when they leave the page, an exit pop. It's a side note. But yeah, the quiz works quite well because it's an exit pop on our website. But then we do duplicate that for every podcast interview that I do, and that's where we get a lot of leads from. So yeah, it works quite well, and we find we get a lot of feedback, people going, oh shit, my website does suck.
Yeah. Well, and do you know what tool you're using for that? For those, again, there's always going to be the guy that's like, I'm going to do it myself.
Elementor. Everything's built into Elementor. Yeah. It's incredible.
See?
Yeah.
That's what I was using when I was trying to play with my stuff. And then I was like, ugh. And then, awesome. So we should hit before we let you go.
I just think, in general, like podcasting is a great platform. I think people from their podcast should send people to a dedicated squeeze or, opt-in page for something or other, whether it's to get, weekly tips or something relevant to their audience. But instead of just sending them to their website, send them to a / freebie, whatever it is, what I mean? And put some effort into that page as well. Yeah, make it, nice design, but let them know what's in it for them for downloading that. And then have a thank you page, like implement some of the things they've learned on this episode. Yeah,
absolutely. All right. Well, Greg, everybody can find you again at studio1design.com, or if you want to take the quiz, studio1design.com/Dave. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you, Dave. It's been awesome. Really appreciate it.